The next person on my list is Professor Benedicto Braga from Brazil, who is the Vice President of the World Water Council. Professor Braga, please.
Excellency.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you so very much to be giving this experience to us. How would you advise the less developed countries, the poor cities that were facing the problems that you faced in the 60s?
Every city's problems are different. But I think that the most important thing really may not be the water itself, but the ability of the city to administer an effective, competent, honest government within which sensible things can be done. Then you can gradually clean up your slums, then you can gradually sewer up your houses. Then you can make sure that when you provide water supply, you are able to charge for the water supply. And if anybody steals water from the mains, well, you can punish them and enforce your will. And then gradually you can make water supply accessible and affordable to the whole population. It's not that the populations within these cities don't find their own solutions. I mean, if you live in a city like that, and there are many in the world, if you are poor, well, you drink dirty water and you cook dirty water. If you are rich, then somebody delivers bottles to you once a week, maybe maybe a few hundred liters, and you use that to cook and drink. And the cost of that is probably 100 times what we charge people in Singapore for water coming out from the tap in the PUB supply. But people accept it, and you change your lifestyle because it's so expensive. Well, you use it very sparingly, and for other things you find other ways and make do with not quite as clean water. But the economic cost of that is very high. And if you can get your system working and stop having to provide every home or every well-off home with bottles every month, it's a tremendous economic saving to the whole population. But I think that depends on the government and the administration, and where the municipal governments, the mayors, have been able to do a good job. I think they have made progress.
Yes. And PM, I would say that Singapore is not the only success story, but Phnom Penh is a success story. Manila is also a success story.
Yeah. So. No, there are many in the world. We are happy we made some progress, and we keep on trying to make progress. But I'm sure there are many others who will outdo us.
The next person I'd like to call on is Dr. Cecilia Totahada.
Could you please share with us what, in your opinion, have been those most important water policies Singapore has developed and implemented?
The most important decision was to treat this as a strategic priority right at the beginning, because we knew that we were vulnerable, that we knew that this was not just an economic resource, but could be something which could be used to threaten us and threaten our national security, and therefore that we had to build up our self-sufficiency, and therefore no effort had to be spared in order to achieve this. I think that was the first most important decision, and then all the rest followed from that. Arising from that, we built new reservoirs in Singapore, we built new catchment areas in Singapore, we sewered up all the homes in Singapore and cleaned up the catchments so that the water could be usable. And we watched new technology, and as new technology became viable, we went into new technology. Many of these things, when we started off, which we have done now, would not have been viable in the 1960s. But because we were watching out for them and didn't give up, so when they became viable, we could do them. For example, the Marina Reservoir, which is just outside, for years it's been a dream for us to clean up the Singapore River and make this, dam up the bay, or in those days no bay, but anyway, dam up the river and draw the water. But the river was a sewer, and you could not imagine that there was no fish in it, and you could not imagine drinking any of the water in it. But we made a lot of effort and spent many years cleaning up the city, moving out the pig farms, moving out the pollutive industries, enforcing pollution standards, and gradually we cleaned up the river. Even then, it was not possible to use the water until new technology came along and you could do reverse osmosis, because in an urban catchment, however careful you are, there will be metals, there will be other materials in the water which you have to clean up and which traditional processes will not be adequate for. And when the technology came, we were ready for that. I think similarly with desalination, we studied it for many years at a time when the only way to do it was flash multi-stage desalination, distillation. It was expensive, so we held back. But as the technology moved, we found there was a solution and we invested in it. Some areas we pioneered, like New Water, where we did a pilot project, PUB, and when we found that it was viable, then we scaled up. So I think the most important decisions were to make this a priority, be prepared to move on a national basis to affect people, and if you need to make major changes, for example, on the pricing, to be prepared to do that, but at the same time to buffer the impact on the population. We decide, today we price water at what it is worth, which is what it will cost us to desalinate. We began to do this about 15 years ago. At that time, we were charging maybe 1/3 what we knew would become necessary. And we couldn't jump there overnight. But we did it over a period of, I think, about 3 years. We introduced offsets for the low-income group so that they would not be adversely affected. We went on a public education exercise to explain to people why it was necessary for us to do this so that we can have desalination, New Water viable, so that we can be self-sufficient and safe. And I think Singaporeans bought the message, they understood that, and so we managed to get it through. So I don't think there are any single magic things which enable us to look sideways or look back. But to be able to see our problem in context and understand that this is for real and not just because the government is crying wolf, I think that's important.